Hey, ladies and gentlemen, it's Dr. Adam Nally coming to you live from Waddell, Arizona with another Doc Talk and why be in ketosis, part number 15. The effect of catecholamines, or in other words, why is exercise ineffective without ketosis? Hello, Mandy. How are you? It's good to see you guys. Hope everyone's doing well on this wonderful Wednesday evening. My name is Dr. Adam Nally, for those of you that don't know me or just signing on the replay, and I am a board-certified family physician and board-certified obesity medicine doc. Hello, Cutting the Carbs. How are you? I've been in practice for 15 years in the Surprise, Arizona area, which is the northwest part of the valley. What was for dinner, Doc? I actually went out with my wife and we had a small piece of prime rib. It was actually quite tasty. Howdy from the Flower Mound of Texas, and hello from Canada. Cool. Hello, Ken. Hello, Mitzi, and hello, Aaron. Good to see you guys again. I thought I would talk to you for 4 or 5 minutes about why be in ketosis, what do catecholamines do, and how do they relate to exercise. It's good to see you guys. Hello, Mouse. How are you? Crystal, thanks for joining us. And Anne, thank you also for joining us. And Frank just signed in as well. Good to see you guys. I'm coming to you live from Periscope here and Facebook Live right there. My questions are over here on Facebook, and so I'm going to be kind of bouncing back and forth. So forgive me if I move back and forth that way. Again, just for introduction, I'm Dr. Adam Nally. I'm a board-certified family physician and obesity medicine specialist, or a fat doctor, depends on how you say that. And I've been practicing general medicine and obesity medicine for the last 15 years in Surprise, Arizona. I've had a number of people coming to me today who were in the office, and they said, "Well, Doc, I'm not losing weight because I stopped exercising." Or I just can't start exercising, so there's no way I'm going to be able to lose weight. I can't exercise, so don't even ask me to lose weight. I actually had a couple of people say that. Hello, Toaster Pastry. How are you? Thanks for joining in. The challenge is that if you look at the statistics, you can exercise your brains out and you're going to lose a whopping 1% of your body fat, no matter how much you exercise. If you look at the 3 largest studies that were ever done, the Women's International Health Study, the Mr. Fit Study, and the Accord Study, which comprises essentially 67,000 people, they all exercised, they cut their calories, and they all lost a whopping 1% of their body fat over a period of up to 13 years in some of these studies. That's really successful, if you ask me. Actually, it's not, and I'm being facetious there. But the challenge is that exercise alone does absolutely nothing for weight loss. Exercise slightly raises your HDL. It might lower your triglycerides, but it does not dramatically affect your cholesterol. So the fact that we've been told to exercise and exercise and exercise our brains out, and that we've all paid thousands of dollars a year for gym memberships in which we've been absolutely ineffective is a big challenge. And that relates to today's topic as to how ketosis affects catecholamines, or how catecholamines affect ketosis. I've said before in previous podcasts or Periscopes or Facebook Lives that the fat cell really is kind of like a room, and there's 1 door in and there's 5 doors out. The first door in is insulin. Exercise will slightly raise HDL, to answer the question that Mandy asked, slightly. Not huge. It may slightly lower LDL-C, but it doesn't do a whole lot that way. And then I'm going to answer questions at the end of this little monologue in about 4 minutes. So pop that question back up in a second, and I'll answer it there on. I missed who asked the question. So insulin actually, as the insulin goes up, fat enters the cell and stays in the cell, because insulin also keeps one of the back doors closed and doesn't let the fat exit the cell. In fact, insulin affects 3 of the back doors specifically. So if your insulin is high, the 3 of the back doors stay closed. And that's one of the big challenges and that's one of the reasons that I was exercising personally. I was running triathlons and preparing for triathlons. So I would exercise an hour during the week and 2 hours on the weekends. So 6 days a week, exercising, 7 hours to 8 hours a day during that period of a week, and absolutely losing no weight. I have people that come in exercising an hour a day, and they cut their calories down to 1,000 or 1,200 calories a day and still gained weight. And so the big challenge is that you would expect, well, if I'm exercising, I'm increasing adrenaline and epinephrine and these hormones called catecholamines. These are the adrenaline. Testosterone is one of those too. It relates to it, I should say. these adrenal hormones, adrenaline and catecholamines, epinephrine, norepinephrine, these hormones should open up one of the back doors of the fat cell. What they do is they actually hit, when those hormones hit the fat cell, they stimulate a cyclic AMP and go through a pathway and then open up what's called HSL, which is hormone-sensitive lipase, and they're supposed to let fat out. The problem is that if insulin stays high, that door stays closed. HSL, or hormone-sensitive lipase, stays closed. The other issue that we see is that inflammation, if you have a chronic disease illness, psoriasis, an autoimmune disease, a chronic infection, or you're healing from a chronic wound, the ASP enzyme or hormone, it's a molecule, also stimulates that hormone-sensitive lipase to stay closed, just like insulin does. And insulin can stimulate that ASP enzyme inside the fat cell. So you've got two factors that suppress or keep that door closed. It's like the deadbolt. Yeah, I unlocked the door handle, but the deadbolt's still closed. So if you don't lower insulin and you don't lower inflammation, and sometimes they're driven together and sometimes they're driven separately, if you don't lower those two things, I don't care how much you exercise, 85% of us out there will not see any success other than 1% of our fat loss. So the key enzyme, and this is why I say insulin is the master hormone, you've got to turn insulin down, and it's actually ASP. It's acetyl, I forget. I'm going to actually talk about that one too. It's ASP, it's acetyl, I forgot the middle one. It'll come to me anyway. Thanks for a good question. You threw me off. I'll come back to it. The challenge is that you've got to first lower insulin. Insulin is one of the drivers of inflammation. But we know that this other hormone called ASP is driven by tumor necrosis factor, which can be driven by cancers. It can be driven by chronic inflammation or chronic infection. And so those two pathways, if they're not dampened down, I don't care how many catecholamines I throw at you, you're not going to see a tremendous amount of weight loss. Now, I can attempt to override it partially by giving you medicines like phentermine, which we use in my office to suppress the appetite and increase the adrenal function and the catecholamines, and they partially help. But again, if you do nothing but use these catecholamines, you're going to see maybe 20 pounds of weight loss, and then it halts. And that's why so many people have had such poor success using these approaches. You can CrossFit your brains out, but if your insulin's still high, you're not going to see great fat loss. You'll see some fat loss, but not great. So the big issue is you've got to turn insulin down first, and ketosis is a method to lower the insulin. If you stop eating carbs, you stop producing insulin. Insulin dampers, you see inflammation damper as well, for the most part. Most of it does. And then what that does is it allows any exercise that you do add, any catecholamines that you do add, to become very effective and open up those doors. So open up those fat cell doors. So if you lower insulin, you open door number 1 in the back of the fat cell. If you lower insulin and you add catecholamines, you open door number 2 in the fat cell. If you lower insulin and you increase the catecholamines and you actually improve testosterone function, which is what happens when you actually add more fat to your diet, you open door number 3 in the fat cell. Now, there are 2 other doors in that fat cell, which we're going to talk about, and we have talked about partially before, and I'll come back to those in another podcast. But that's the magic of catecholamines and why they work and why they don't work, because you really have to have the master key first, which is that of insulin. So you got to lower the insulin. That's the master key. Then you can actually add in the catecholamines. Ketosis is the magic dietary approach that does this. So lowering the starch and the carbs in your diet. In my office, we lower it to less than 20 grams per day. Then we can add in those pieces that we need to add in to open up those back doors. So hopefully that answers the question about how the fat cell works as far as we know it today. And there are a lot of pieces. ASP is one of those pieces that we're just barely learning a little bit about, and I'll come back and talk about that specifically. And so we'll do that. Can you increase catecholamines naturally? Yes. Adequate sleep and regular stimulating exercise does that. If your blood glucose doesn't go below 90, can your body use ketones? Yeah, of course it can. You can actually use ketones all the time. Normal blood sugar fasting fluctuates between 100 and 99 and 70. As long as your body maintains that window of blood sugar, it can use ketones as the primary fuel. That's the key. I appreciate all you guys jumping in here, and I was monologuing, so I'm just going to look back here on Facebook Live and see if there's any questions. Hopefully you can hear me appropriately and you're picking up my voice. Let's see here. This is why we need to reduce sugar. Exactly, Rob. Hello, Linda. Great. Thanks. Thank you, Nicole. Let's see. All right. So hello from Scottsdale. Hello, Kim. So any questions about that aspect? Any questions about catecholamines, opening up the doors of the fat cell, the effect of using ketosis. Thanks for all of you guys joining in. If you like what you're hearing and you enjoy this, please share it out. Please go to my website at docmuscles.com, docmuscles.com. Somebody, if you would, put that in the chat box there so people can, new people who see me know where I'm going. How to prevent gallbladder problems. Stop eating carbs. I'm dead serious. Your carbohydrate is driven by carbohydrate induction in the presence of fat with high cholecystokinin, CCK, and that drives the gallstones. Do you eat an avocado regularly? I do. Burn more calories than consume? Simple, which is the biggest fallacy and joke in the world. I tried doing that and it didn't work for me, and nor does it work for 85% of my patients. How long does it take to recover from HOMA-IR of 2.2? It doesn't take time to recover. It just takes you time to stop eating carbohydrate. Carbohydrate drives that. Hello from Houston. Hello. Crystal, thanks for putting in my website. Appreciate that. Can free fatty acid release from fat cells reassemble as triglycerides in the blood? Well, that's exactly what they are. They are triglycerides in the bloodstream. They're triglycerides as they float through the cholesterol. The cholesterol is referred to in two ways. Cholesterol is a molecule itself, but we also refer to cholesterol as the HDL, LDL, the chylomicrons. They're cholesterol, particles. And triglycerides are the passenger inside the cholesterol particle bus. And there's different buses. There's big buses, small buses, and buses are labeled differently, and they're labeled with different proteins and cholesterols. So your HDL are essentially the buses that are moving the triglyceride from the fat cell to the muscle, and the LDL are the cholesterol buses that are moving it from the liver to the fat cells. So no weight loss in 3 months on keto, insulin resistant, probably, and so you need to look closely at your diet, at the other hormones that may be driving that. How are people losing weight without ketosis then? Because what happens was when you exercise, if you're not insulin resistant, you're actually shifting yourself into a state where you're burning through the glucose that's in your system. You're creating a partial period of mild ketosis where the insulin drops, and your body then says, hey, insulin's low enough that we're going to pull the fat or the triglyceride out of the fat cell and then use it as fuel as well. So those people that are not insulin resistant, they can go exercise and they can burn fat, and they're wonderful, and they're like 15% of the population. These are the people that are on all the CrossFit ads, and they're all the Olympic athletes and our amazing bodybuilders that we see. These are the guys that have this wonderful genetics that don't have real bad insulin resistance, unfortunately, and we despise them because they can exercise and the weight falls right off, and the rest of us exercise and nothing happens. Hi from Miami. Good to see you. Yes, love the keto wave lives. I do HIIT workouts. Do HIIT workouts really work if it's coupled with the keto diet? They absolutely do. The benefit of a HIIT workout, high intensity training, is that you're pushing your body into ketosis. And the reason it works for even Paleolithic diets and even mild caloric restricted diets is that you're going to, it is the damn insulin resistance night out. It really is. The challenge is that that HIIT is actually pushing you into windows of using more and more ketones because you're burning through the starch by the explosive exercise, and then you're forcing the body to release a little bit of ketone into the bloodstream. So you're using both sugar and ketone at the same time. So these folks, 15% of the population roughly, are real efficient at using both fuel sources, even though they're not always in ketosis. Now, you and I, in order to get into that state, we have to lower the insulin low enough to even get there. And that's about 85% of us. And it varies in degrees. My wife can have a piece of bread and still be successful. If I have one piece of bread, it's as if I ate an entire freaking loaf. And so that's the challenge. Is glucose sparing a sign of insulin recovery? It actually is. Well, it's a sign that your body's using it's not a sign of insulin recovery. What's the sign of insulin recovery is that your fasting insulin level starts to drop below 5. And that can take up to 18 months, actually 24 months in some cases, of a ketogenic or very low carbohydrate diet to see that pancreas recover to that. And that's what usually the time frame. So doing a ketogenic low carbohydrate diet for 18 to 24 months is what I usually see clinically. How to recover from insulin resistance. Ketogenic diet for 18 to 24 months. Thanks, Nicole, for saying that. All you guys signing in, thank you. It's good to see you. I'm just checking to see if there's any other questions on either Facebook or Periscope. Is physiologic insulin resistance a problem? So people use the term physiologic insulin resistance. I hate the word because it makes you think it's a disease, and it's not. In my mind, physiologic insulin resistance, as it's talked about by a couple people online, is really physiologic glucose sparing. And the reason it's glucose sparing is you're now using ketones so predominantly that the body will then preserve its glucose to use for the brain and for formation of glycogen. And so you'll see a slight bump in the fasting blood sugar after you've been in ketosis for 6 to 12 months. regularly. But if you check the hemoglobin A1C, which is the average blood sugar over a 90-day period, it's down in the 4.7 or 5.0 range, which means that your average sugars never go very high at all, but they stay down in the 120 range on average, but your morning sugar is a little high. And all that's happening is your body's preserving a bit of glucose for neurotransmitter generation overnight with your brain. And so you see a slight bump in the fasting sugar, but your average sugars drop. That's physiologic glucose sparing is what I call it, because it's more of a physiologic process that no one's ever seen, because very few of us have done it. So they called it physiologic insulin resistance. I think it's a bad term to use. Is it possible to have insulin resistance with an you actually can. All a hemoglobin A1C of 4.8 means, and the question is, can you have insulin resistance with an A1C of 4.8? The issue is you can have it. All that hemoglobin A1C is what your average sugar has been over a period of 3 months. That's all it means. You can still have the insulin resistance, but if you're following a ketogenic diet and you're cutting the carbs down, what that means is that your average sugars has stayed, in the 4.8% range for 3 months. That's all it means. Good question. Wow, you guys are smart. Good questions. I'm going to check Facebook here just to make sure we're good there. Can keto create too much adrenaline? My physical anxiety symptoms are through the roof. It's actually not adrenaline that you're experiencing. What you're experiencing is the ketone is driving the production of atrial natriuretic peptide. And atrial natriuretic peptide actually can have a stimulating catecholamine-like effect in some people. And so if it's driving the anxiety, you're either experiencing an initial effect from that and you're not used to it, or you're getting hypoglycemic episodes because you're still producing high levels of insulin, and so you're kind of doing this yo-yo thing. So you're producing beta natric, you're producing ANP, which is atrial natriuretic peptide, which has a catecholamine-like effect, and then you're producing excess insulin, and then your blood sugar bottoms out, and because you're not used to that, the body produces more epinephrine, and so you get this wavering effect, if that makes sense. And that's where I see a lot of people that in the first couple of weeks or even month of a ketogenic diet, if they're pushing their ketones way up, they'll actually see anxiety and a little jitteriness as they pass through that. It's not uncommon to see that. Do I need to test for ketones? If you're trying to be in ketosis, yes, I would test for ketones. That's essential. I'd test blood. I use the Abbott's ketone. It's called the. Oh my word! It just slipped my mind. It's the. I'm gonna pull it out right here. I talk so much that I'm having too much fun, and I'm using their monitor. It's the Precision Extra. I can't even think today. So the Precision Extra ketone monitor, that's what this is. I don't know if you can see that on Facebook there. That's the one I use. It's the most accurate one I've found. It works great. And initially I was checking every day, 2 or 3 times a day, and then I backed off to once or twice a week. How has ketosis worked out for me? I've been doing low carb and or ketogenic diets for almost 12 years. Somewhere between 11 and 12 years. And so I am so very insulin resistant. I have my dad's genetics. My dad weighed about almost 400 pounds when he died at 58. Because of the high insulin loads he produces, and I produce the same, he weighed about 400 pounds. He ended up having a quintuple bypass because all five of the vessels of the heart got blocked. A few years later, 3 of those had to be stented. He was on 150 units of insulin and 32 pills when he died. I have the same exact genetics. And so when I noticed that I was 65 pounds over heavier than I am today, coming out of residency, I realized something was wrong. I started exercising like a fiend, doing triathlons, cutting my calories down to 1,200 a day. Did not work for me. I kept gaining. And that was where I realized I had a problem and realized it's not the exercise, it's not the catecholamines, it's not the caloric restriction. We got to do something else, because 85% of the people I saw had the same problem. That's what drove me to start looking at other hormones. We now know there are at least 30 hormones that affect weight, insulin being the master hormone. So you got to regulate insulin first, then modify the other ones. Hello from Brisbane. Reasons to take thyroid meds. Only if you have a thyroid problem. What advice do you have for a person using Victoza? It's a great medicine. I love it. It actually helps 2 of the other broken hormone signals that happen in people who are pre-diabetic or diabetic. Fantastic medication. I'm a big fan of it. It's liraglutide is the generic for that. For those of you on the other side of the pond that may not know what the brand name over here is. Will that insulin resistance ever change for you? For me, I'm so insulin resistant. Mine has improved, but if I walk by a bakery, I still gain weight. That's the problem. So I have decided that I have to live my life, restricting carbs. But hey, I can do that because I get to eat bacon. So I'm okay. Somebody popped a question up here on Periscope, and I missed it. Are these things not in biochemistry books? No, they're not in biochemistry books. Because in medical school, none of us understood this. Any medical reason I should make my 9-year-old low carb or keto? Kids' metabolisms are so fast that most kids, if you just do mild low carb with them, they'll actually grow into their weight and they'll maintain and stabilize out. With kids, we treat them a little differently. Because their metabolisms are like 4 times faster than yours and mine, because they're growing so much and they're so active. If we just back the starch back, their insulin levels normalize out. We give them adequate fat and protein, and they grow like weeds. But they don't gain fat. They gain muscle, musculature, and things of that nature. Do you recommend for a ketosis diet? What do I recommend? Go to my website at docmuscles.com. Sign up for my weight loss mini course, the 6-part. It's free. That'll at least get you started. If you want to go to my blog, if you go to docmuscles.com and /blog, or click on the blog when you go to Doc Muscles, and then type in principles of ketogenic lifestyle. It'll give you the 10 basic principles to follow. That's also a free article on my website. That'll at least get you jump started and give you the information behind there. Dropped a bunch of fat, 50 pounds, then stopped after started working out and trying exogenous ketones. There's something else going on. I would say there's you have to look at your thyroid, look at your adrenal glands, look at something else going on. If you drop a bunch of weight and then you halted, and if you're looking at your scale weight only and you added exogenous ketones, you probably started gaining more muscle and losing fat still. And that's what I see a lot of women. They're so fixated on the scale that they don't realize they've lost a half inch off their waist, but the scale weight remained the same, and they freak out, and then their stress goes up and their cortisol goes up, and then they stop losing weight altogether. So remember that when you improve your ketosis and ketone levels, whether that's through exercise or through adding exogenous ketones or just tightening up the diet, then you end up seeing a halting of the scale weight. And when you gain muscle mass, and that's the big issue. I think they put in there that they stopped seeing fat loss. I'm assuming you were measuring fat through a body composition machine or something like that. If that's the case, then we need to look at the other 29 hormones that drive this process. Exactly, Mandy. Exactly. So yes, look at the other 29 hormones, because those are the important factors. And I talk about those in other posts. Any positive effect on occasional carb night? Yes, Seth. Seth wants to know if having a cheat night or a carb night is problematic. My website is docmuscles.com, verified patriot, docmuscles.com altogether. Somebody plug that in the Periscope chat box, and that'll help. The challenge with the cheat day is that for many of us who are more significantly insulin resistant, you're going to have carb cravings for up to 72 hours after the cheat day. So if you cheat on Sunday, you're going to crave through Wednesday for many cases. Thank you, Mandy, for putting that up. And those cravings, most people they can handle 1 day of cravings. When they hit 2 days of cravings, it gets to be challenging. And the third day, most people fall off the wagon. And then they cheat again Wednesday. And then they crave for another 3 days straight. And so after a week or two of that, they just give up. So I don't recommend cheat days, especially for those that are more insulin resistant, because your cravings are going to be huge. Now, you may just decide, it's my birthday and I'm going to have a piece of cake. Great, have a piece of cake. But realize that the benefit of having that cake for your birthday is 3 days of carb cravings. So you have to decide if it's worth the cravings. Now, if it's Aunt Matilda, and Aunt Matilda's in her 90s and she made her famous chocolate chip cookies and she's going to pass away, and if you don't eat her chocolate chip cookies, she's going to be just devastated, then you probably ought to eat her chocolate chip cookies and suffer with the 3 days of carb cravings. But if it's just you're walking past Panera Bread and the Panera Bread calls out to you, then you realize that it's going to keep calling to you for 3 days. I've been on keto for 5 months, lost 37 pounds, blood ketones 0.9 to 4.9, but I've stopped losing weight. Again, what happens when you stop seeing the weight and the fat loss, Lionel, you need to look at the other hormone factors that are there. Is it a sweetener? Is it too much protein in your diet? Are you not eating enough fat? Is there a thyroid issue? Is there an adrenal issue? Is there a problem with leptin? Is there a problem with Catacholamines? Is there one of these issues? That's why I do these podcasts. What would you mean regulate the other hormones after getting insulin under control? Literally there, and again, hopefully that answered the question I just said, Roger, about that. It's good to see you, Rick. Thank you for signing in. Medical test for insulin resistance. If you have any fasting blood sugar higher than 99 on a fasting test, or if you have any random blood sugar greater than 200, or your 2-hour after a meal blood sugar is greater than 140, or you have a hemoglobin A1C higher than 5.6%, you are insulin resistant. If you have a fasting insulin greater than 5 or greater, you're insulin resistant. If you have skin tags anywhere on your body, you are insulin resistant. And if you go to my website at docmuscles.com, go to the blog and type in skin tag or type in insulin resistance, there's about 4 or 5 articles that'll give you pictures of what that is and what that means. You are very welcome, Nicole. Welcome. Thanks for signing in, guys. It's good to see you. We've been doing this now 25 minutes. Wow, you guys had some awesome questions. Thanks for the good questions. If there's any other, I'll answer them. Otherwise, I will get ready to sign off here. Again, remember, you got to be in ketosis to lower the insulin. That way the catecholamines can be effective. Otherwise, the catecholamines, the exercise, isn't effective for about 85% of us. That's the big challenge that we see. All right, you guys. Well, it sounds like there's no more questions popping up. Everybody's probably getting ready to either eat dinner or get in bed. Thanks, Low Carb JC, for joining in with us and being here. I appreciate it. Thanks for all the hearts. If you haven't shared this out and you found value with it, please share it out to your friends and family and neighbor, and even the neighbor you don't like down the street. How can I get my glucose down to 90s or low 100s, 9 months keto? Well, to be honest, if you don't have those symptoms, can you still be insulin resistant? Well, if you don't, you can still be insulin resistant if you don't have the symptoms. Yes, the blood test will tell you specifically. How do you lower the blood sugars? Realize that if you are mildly insulin resistant or significantly insulin resistant, when you are in keto, you may not see blood sugars drop below 110. They may still stay there. And that's okay as long as your hemoglobin A1C or your average sugars are dropping low. Are there any supplements to use? Yes. If you go to my website and you click on my supplements section or click on the keto cart, it'll show you a number of supplements that I recommend for my patients. I developed a vitamin called Keto Living, or called Keto Essentials, through a company called ketoliving.com. That's the vitamin that I developed. I recommend berberine. Berberine is a wonderful supplement to use with a ketogenic diet. It acts like metformin. So if you're on metformin, you don't need it. But if you are not, it actually helps your body handle and receive the insulin signal more effectively. It's like I said, it's like metformin without the side effects. We added chromium to it to help with that as well. Will blood sugar in the 90s too low hundreds affect my ketones? No, it shouldn't. You can be in I'll be in ketosis with a blood sugar of 101. That's actually okay. In physiologic glucose sparing, I'll have a blood sugar of 105 yet have a ketone level of 1. That's actually normal. I see that all the time. So ketones aren't driven by normal blood sugars. And normal blood sugars being 70 to 100 in a person who's not insulin resistant, or 70 to 110 in a person who is insulin resistant, but you can still be in ketosis with those ranges. Your body will fudge a little with the higher blood sugar because of the way it handles insulin, but that's okay. That's actually all right. What affects the ketosis is your insulin load, not your actual blood sugar load in the normal ranges. Now, abnormal ranges of blood sugar fasting are going to be up into the 120s, 130s, 140s. But if you're around 110, even 115, I've seen some people be in ketosis with a fasting sugar of 115. So I'm not horribly worried about that. If it goes up over 110, up into 115, you start to see insulin rise, and you start to see that happen. Since they have elevated to the 90s, hundreds, weight has stalled. So it's not. So then that means there's something driving insulin. So the question is, if the person's fasting blood sugars went from 90s to 100 and the weight loss stalled, that means that there's something driving insulin that's causing the sugars to stay slightly higher. So there's an infection, there's a problem with inflammation, there's a sweetener, there's something like that going on. That's where the doctor comes into play. That's what I do. So come see me, and I'll help you find out the answer to that. Great questions, guys. I'm going to sign off. We've been yammering here for almost 30 minutes. Hopefully it's been enjoyable and helpful for you. Hopefully it's giving you some course direction. For more course direction, like I said, go to my website, docmuscles.com, sign up for my weight loss mini course. It's free. Click on the blog and read the blog. Yes, Mandy, come see us in Arizona. We'd love to see you. You guys have a great evening. Natalie MC, thanks for joining in. We'll see you guys later. Remember, keep the fat high, keep the carbs low, and stay in ketosis. And we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye, guys.